Well, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and get things started. Thank you for joining today for the Eden Development Grants Program Q&A webinar. I'm Abby Lilpop. I'm the National Eden Project Coordinator, and I'm based at Purdue University. I'm one of the 5 members of the Purdue FADI team, which is the Food and Ag Defense Initiative team, which one of my cohorts is on with me today. So Michael Wilcox. So he'll also be helping field some questions and as we move through this. What I was going to start with was actually doing a slight program overview and walking through kind of some of the need to know items of the program, and then address a few of the kind of frequently asked questions, things that we've already heard pop up or that have been addressed via email. And then I really want to open it up to just a forum of for you to ask questions. So you can feel free to use the chat pod, or when we get towards the end, feel free just to unmute yourself and we'll just kind of have a conversation that way. So the Eden Development Grants Program is actually one of the deliverables outlined in that Purdue Food and Ag Defense Initiative, which is the proposal that comes to it, or that we delivered back to the USDA NIFA when we were awarded those FADI funds 2 years ago. So what we have left are 3 rounds of this grant funding. The first year was a targeted fund, which was ran actually in conjunction with being awarded through the executive committee. Those projects you'll see here in the very near future. One is a mental health piece that came out of the Family Consumer Sciences group. The Community Economic Development Committee worked on a revamp of Ready Business and another program called On One Hand, 5 things that local governments need to know, as well as then the Ag and Natural Resources Committee has done a rework on an animal biosecurity course, and we hope to have it launched here this fall. Moving forward, this is the first of the, well, like I said, the next 3 grant funding cycles. So we're doing fall 2020. We look to do another round in the spring, awarding for spring of 2022 or 2021, and then again in the fall. The purpose of this program is to develop innovative ways to do extension initiatives, how to further advance our work and broaden the horizons of what does disaster programming look like in the communities in which we serve. It's to help advance not just in that response or recovery phases, but through the all phases of disasters with a whole community approach. In the proposal, when you go through it, you'll see that we addressed 5 focus areas or themes. They're very broad, and that was done on purpose so that projects could really kind of fit in a niche. So when you break it down, the 5 key concepts are information sharing and distribution techniques, educational materials, programs, and delivery methods. This one, I think, as we've went through our listening sessions and through the surveying that was done prior to leading up to this RFP, was probably one of the ones that was most highlighted. And especially after we've taken that turn through COVID-19, we saw a lot of requests for new ways of delivering materials and programs. So that delivery methods is really a key concept to when we're talking about innovative approaches. We've all realized over the last 8 months that we have to change the way we do things in extension. So this is kind of that broad topic of where we kept getting a lot of feedback along that same track. The third is materials targeting underserved audiences. So those that speak English as a second language, low literacy rates, seniors, those with technological or lack technological access. Then we have innovative approaches. So just kind of new ways of doing the old things. How can we further what we've been doing, or how do we change our approach to doing those things? And enhancing partnerships. So innovative approaches to expanding whom we work with. An additional kind of a sixth area is other relevant topics. So we are open to proposals that may not fit exactly one of those 5 things that are where you feel like there's maybe some gray area, or maybe you fit a couple of them, or you don't want to, it just doesn't necessarily, click one of those check marks. We have opened it up to basically what we're calling timely topics. So as this year has proven, we've kind of been a little bit all over the place with a lot of new forms of disasters or new approaches to the way we're having to do things. And so, again, this is kind of one of those catch-alls for you that's available. When we talk about the funding that's available, it is outlined that for this funding cycle, we have approximately $140,000 eligible for award. We've agreed to the maximum award for any singular project of being $35,000. So that can be up to, and that can include a 10% indirect. But the 10% indirect does have to be a portion of that 35. It's not in addition to 35. But we do stand that there is no commitment to fund any particular application or a specific number of awards. If we don't use that full 140,000 this time, it will roll into that next set of grant funding. Eligibility. This is open to all extension professionals, either land grant or sea grant, in all of the systems. So I've had a lot of questions about whether sea grants are eligible. Yes, they are, regardless of if that sea grant is a system that is partnered at a land grant university or if it is freestanding of one. We've also opened it up to all 3 land grant systems. The 62s, the 90s, and the 1994s are all eligible to apply. We are allowing for teams to apply. Those can include inter-institutional as well as multi-institutional or multi-states. But the one requirement is that at least one individual on the project must be an Eden delegate. And they can be either a delegate or a point of contact. It does not matter. The duration of the project is a 15-month project, with the beginning coming in February of 2021 and running through the end of April of 2022. At this time, it should not be anticipated to receive a no-cost extension. Let me say that in a little bit more clearly way. At this time, there is no anticipation of a no-cost extension. So what are some of the frequently asked questions we've encountered so far? Are there match requirements? No. These grants, these mini grants or developmental grants from Eden do not have a match associated to them. So that does make them very different from the USDA NIFA Smith-Lever special needs grants. So that is one of the that's one of the big questions we've been receiving so far. What can and can't be the funding be used for? So I highlighted some of the ones that they cannot be used for. Again, we all know our USDA funding comes with a lot of stipulations. So we can't do tuition remission, space, fixed things. So desks, bookcases, those kinds of things are kind of no-goes. The purchase of computers or hardware. So the purchase of computers and cameras and things like that is a no-go. Leases are eligible during that period only. Any expense that's not directly related to the project. The other thing that is not allowable under these funds, which I failed to list, is Food and beverage. So if these funds are anticipated to, if you plan to use them for listening sessions or workshops or something, when you're collecting research to further your project, we cannot actually cover those pieces. So food and beverage is out. What's our projected timeline? Proposals are due Friday, December 4th. We did decide that 11:59 p.m. Pacific to give all of our time zones eligibility. Award notifications will go out in mid-January. Right now, we're anticipating around the week of the 20th. I think that's a Wednesday. So give or take, I think that's when we're hoping to have award notifications go out, with the start dates being February 1st. So we'll actually have a relatively short turnaround on getting those subcontracts in place, but we'll help you get all of those pieces together. For the most part, the asks of what is required of this proposal really sets us up well to be able to get those and ensure that they go through quickly. Again, like I said, we have an anticipation of it running a 15-month period, so from February 1st through April 30th of 2022. And again, at this time, it is not anticipated that a no-cost extension will be granted. However, if we find out that we are eligible to offer one, projects will only be extended from that April 30th to August 31st. So it will be a very short extension if one is even eligible. But at this point, we do not anticipate to have a no-cost extension. All right, so what's the application process? The easiest way to find our application guidelines is through the Eden website. Here's a direct link. So extensiondisaster.net is the Eden website. Within the delegate portal, you'll find a funding opportunities tab. Right now, this is the only grant opportunity that is being highlighted in that funding opportunities section. So it's pretty clear. It's also, if you go to the main Eden website, it is the featured item on the home screen banner right now. So it should be the first one that appears. You can click that link and it will take you directly to those application guidelines. In order to submit your proposal, I've also included that link. We did a bit.ly version to make it relatively simple. So 2020 development grants will take you to the submission process. It is being submitted through a Qualtrics. However, the pieces that you're asked to submit, your summary and your description, those will be turned into PDFs and submitted as a file drop there. All right, so further questions upon the application process. A project summary is required. This is a crucial piece for our reviewers. Your 250 word summary is what should highlight and give your reviewers basically the essentials of everything they need to know about your proposal. The layout is very simple. We should not exceed 10 pages of written text, and you have up to 5 additional pages for figures and tables, kind of standard 1-inch margins, a Times New Roman or Calibri 12-point font, single or double spaced text. The project description should include the title of your proposal and highlight which of those broad themes or topic areas your proposal most closely aligns with. An introduction and problem statement, objectives and questions, methods, data analysis, project timeline, proposed budget, and references. In the RFP that went out and those application guidelines online, a more detailed instructions of what each of those bullet pointed items are can be found. I didn't want to get too wordy here on this slide, but that project description, those bulleted items is what will comprise your 10-page packet. So you have 10 pages to go through those, and again, 5 for figures and charts. We will also need to include a list of your principal investigators and your collaborators, institutions, contact information, and highlight which of those team members are either Eden delegates or Eden points of contact. All right. Like I said, I was going to keep this relatively short and simple to just go over some of the key pieces because I wanted to give the opportunity for you all to ask questions of us. Let me see, where in the world did I put my chat pod? I'll bring that up now. Like I said, feel free to either drop questions in the chat pod or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. If at a later time you have questions, I've included both my contact information as well as Michael's. Feel free to reach out to either of us. So I've included my phone number. That is my cell phone number because we're still teleworking. And I don't always have the greatest with the rollover from my desk phone to here. So just please feel free to contact my cell phone directly so you can call or text it or send an email at any time. But all right, does anyone have any questions? Y'all are making this really
I'll be the first one to go to just kind of get the ball rolling. Talk to us about what is, you talked about what was allowable expenses or what was disallowable expenses. What are kind of some things that are allowable? And does travel, or are there any kind of travel needs or requirements that attach to this as well?
So allowable expenses include salaries for the duration of the project. Travel, yes. To include work being done for the project that does not include travel, it is not an allowable expense to do travel to the Eden annual meeting. That is one caveat. But for research purposes or getting together to actually work on the project, those are allowable expenses. Material printing and distribution is allowable. Let's see. Those are kind of our big ones. So really, yeah, time, travel, and materials in terms of just non-hardware materials.
Abby, this is Connie. What if we would, and I'm just throwing this out there, I don't know if we would do this or not, but have a focus group. Would the expenses of those who came to the focus group, like mileage, anything like that, or rental of a room for the meeting or something like that, would that be allowed?
Those would be allowable expenses, yes. Like I said, the only thing we could not cover on something like that would be any food and beverage offered okay. During those sessions, but we can cover physical space and ways and means of getting to and from.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question. So in the call, it says possible research topics, and then part of the criteria is the methodology. So is it necessary to have a research focus with the proposal, or could it be something in development?
It can be even based off of prior research. You would just want to cite that and include that as a reference in your proposal. So when you go through that process, it should even discuss that of if you have any cited papers or things that have led you to, we've done the research, now here's a program that we would like to implement based off of what we found, that's allowable as well. But we wanted to leave the opportunity open to have research projects as well. So I do have a question that came in asking, are multi-person teams encouraged or are individual person proposals okay? Both are allowable, both are encouraged. Our reviewers' criteria does not actually have any weight as to if teams are preferred or not. So I would encourage either opportunity. So if you have a team, that's great. But if you want to apply as an individual, that's also perfectly acceptable.
Okay, I have another question, follow up.
Yeah, good.
So if there isn't a research component, but that piece of the methodology is still being reviewed, or do you have specific things that you have in mind that would be looked for?
Good question. Let me see. Michael, do you have an answer for that one?
Yeah, I think the way we would handle that, so you're thinking it would be purely an extension program. All right, so if it's purely extension, it obviously is going to be fed by applied research. And you would want to not only justify the rationale for the extension program, but you'd want to provide evidence that that this is needed in terms of a needs assessment, but also that the strategies that you are proposing to employ are going to be ones that have a high probability of being effective. So I think really the research lends not only relevance, but it also shows that whatever you're proposing is evidence-based in some way, shape, or form. If it's not supported by the research, then we're going to have a hard time justifying you extending that, because we'd be calling into question what you're extending in the first place, right? So what we're trying to do is strike a balance between something that's purely extension versus something that's purely research. You know, if you come in with a hybrid proposal that has both, you know, that's fine too, but it all needs to be rooted in evidence-based research. And so in terms of methodology, you're not going to be talking about sample sizes and X, Y, and Z. You're going to be talking more about your extension methodology and how you're applying the research.
We've also received the question, have these grants been offered in the past? If so, is there a place we can go to see what has been done in the past? No, this is actually the first time that the FATI funds have actually had a competitive grants program incorporated into that funding source. So this is our very first round. Like I said, the previous year's funding was targeted asks, and we had a couple of projects that were refreshers on existing curriculum, as well as then 2 new builds. So we had that On One Hand Local Governments, which is soon to be released, was kind of a new build for Eden, and then the mental health, or not really curriculum, but fact sheets and program that was developed by the FCS committee was new as well. But those were targeted asks. They were not actually this grants program. So this is our first round. While we wait for another question, Michael, do you have anything you would like to add in terms of what we're looking for, or?
No, I think I would just simply like to add that we're excited to be able to do this. I think historically, for those of you that have been connected to Eden for a long time, you know that we have had resources pass through the network, and those resources were not necessarily passed through in a competitive manner. That doesn't say it wasn't, that's not to say that it wasn't done fairly, it just wasn't done competitively. It really relied on the network and bubbling up ideas and so on. And we felt, in light of the fact that the FATI aspect of Eden was made competitive, that in that same spirit, we would make the resources that we were going to make available through the grant competitive as well. And we're hopeful that this will galvanize some new partnerships amongst delegates, and perhaps people that aren't delegates, but are going to be good, solid partners with Eden as we continue to, grow the sort of multiplier effect associated with the network. Like Abby said, certainly if you want to go solo, that's fine too. There's plenty of extension programs out there that have been done by a single individual. Think of our friend from North Dakota that did the pandemic curriculum. Lord knows that curriculum has been very useful this year and used in a lot of different ways. But whatever it is that you do, the spirit in which this is put out there is that we really want to motivate innovation and opportunities to enhance the network's impact and really make a difference for our stakeholders in a tangible way. So just as Abby and Cheyenne have been documenting all year during COVID, how Eden has had a tangible impact on the United States and our stakeholders, we're hopeful that these grants will do the same. And while $35,000 doesn't sound like a lot, and you don't necessarily have to apply for the entire $35,000, we've seen through our issues-based action teams, through Purdue Extension and other smaller grant opportunities, sometimes this can really catalyze something even bigger. So if we can get things going, show impact based on the work that you do, all the better for yourself and your program, as well as for Eden. And so this really is in the spirit of trying to effectively and efficiently utilize the resources that we've been endowed with from FATI.
All right, so the question is there a greater priority on enhancing partnerships at national versus regional versus state levels? Honestly, I would say I don't think so. I think that outlining ways and efforts that can enhance partnerships at the localist of levels is still just as beneficial as creating partnerships at the national level and anywhere in between. So I don't necessarily think that when it comes down to our review criteria, that enhancing partnerships is going to be judged based on level, as in the kind of the ranks. I think it's more so on impact. And so creating partnerships at the localist of levels can be even more impactful, I guess, than a national partnership in some ways, and vice versa. So to me, no, there's not really a priority set on which level of partnership building we're doing.
I guess I would add to that just to simply say that scalability is certainly something that would be desired. So if you're hyper focused on something that is relevant to, a single county in the middle of southeastern Indiana and would be relevant nowhere else, that might be a little challenging. But if it's something that's hyper local, but yet quite scalable in terms of a best practice, or being able to take it and extrapolate what was done at sort of the pilot level, that would be certainly something that's desirable. Yeah, at the end of the day, these products will live on the Eden website, and we want them to be relevant and timely, and we want to see people downloading them and using them. And so applicability and relevance and scalability are all things that you'll want to keep in mind as you're thinking about what this looks like.
All right, well, we'll give a couple more minutes for anybody to chime in with questions if you have them. Otherwise, we will not force everybody to hang out here. Give you a little bit of time back in your afternoon. All right. Last call for questions.
I just saw that last question, Abby, and I guess I would answer that by saying that, oh, I see. Okay, it's private. I will answer that. The person who wrote me, is it okay if I answer this publicly? Oh, need to be private. Okay. The question was, are multiple distinct proposals from the same program okay? And I would answer that by saying that it's like I'm from New York, the New York State Lotto, you got to be in it to win it kind of thing. And so certainly we would like to see this be a competitive process, and certainly would like to entertain as many proposals as we possibly can. The fact that Clemson, let's say, comes up with 5 proposals from different entities, or maybe they've all got the same PI, but they're 5 different ideas. That's sort of immaterial to us. It's going to be, what is the quality of the idea? Now, the chances probably of, let's say there's 4 $35,000 proposals, and that will empty the entire thing. Would probably be a little cognizant of that maybe we don't want to spend $140,000 on a single institution, not to pull Clemson out of a hat. But I don't see that being a major distinguishing criteria. We're really going to be looking at the quality and relevance of the proposals that are out there. Sometimes people shy away from competing with one another from different shops on the same campus. But this isn't one of those things where you need to shop your proposal through an office on campus and have campus be the initial filter before you send yours in. We just competed on a grant like that through USDA Rural Development. There's no need to do that. So certainly if there's different ideas bubbling up at the same institution, we'd love to hear what they are.
And I received a question that says, can one person be on multiple proposals, maybe one at a local level and one at the regional level? To me, the answer is yes. That you're welcome to be part. You can apply individually. You can be part of a team. I don't think there's any issue with you actually appearing on several proposals or more than one.
Yeah, we have to work under the assumption that you have it within your FTE and within your time available, that you are able to do both projects, and that you wouldn't have signed on to both projects if you're just trying to stuff the ballot box. Not that ever happens, but stuff the ballot box, and hopefully one of these proposals will hit. But if both were hit, I'd have to choose between one or the other. I would hope that you would put in the number of proposals that you yourself would be able to handle in terms of your bandwidth. So I know there's some of us on this call probably that have 95% of their time already spoken for, in their PARs that you have to do quarterly, and don't submit 20% of your time when you've only got 5% of your time left. So be aware of your bandwidth and what you can get done if both proposals were accepted.
All right. Well, if that goes for all of the questions, again, You have both of our contact information, so feel free to email us. Like I said, you're welcome to call or text me as well. We're here to answer whatever questions you have, and we look forward to you all submitting.